We all want love, but most of us don't want to date to get it. Because let's be honest, dating sucks. But maybe it doesn't have to if we actually know what we're doing. Hi, I'm Kira Sabin, and this is Reinventing Dating, a smart and sweary podcast for all singles to learn the mindsets and skills to date with intention and confidence. Join me weekly as I break down the science and psychology behind what's working in our dating culture and what isn't. Every week, I bring a new topic, trend, skill, or mindset that can help us get out of our own way to learn how to date for relationships that we actually want. Because love isn't broken, but dating is. But I'm reinventing it. Let's do this. Well, hello there, Sugar Pantses, and welcome to another episode of Reinventing Dating. I'm Kira, and we're doing something a little bit different this week. I am actually going to take a step away from our current series to do an actually relevant guest. What do I mean by relevant? Today, I am talking about the very viral TikTok series called Who the Fuck Did I Marry? By a woman called Risa M. Tisa. Now, one of the gifts of having so many incredible graduates in my life from my coaching or programs is that they share such good content with me. And this got shared with me like 8 times within a day. So I'm like, okay, what the fuck is this? And then I went over there, and this is a 50-part series. And each part is about 10 minutes long. So you guys, I worked for it this week for you. I sat there and listened to it for about a whole day to hear this story, to come over, to talk about it, so that you didn't have to go and listen unless you wanted to. But I not only listened to this, took notes, everything that I do for this podcast, but I also decided to put together one of my favorite workshops and sell it as a compliment to this podcast. After you hear this story, I think you're going to be very interested in this workshop I'm putting together and is available when this podcast comes out, which is how to spot people who are not ready for a relationship. And that is a very kind statement compared to the story that I am going to share today. So I listened to all of it, and boy, do I have thoughts. And more importantly, I have specific mindsets that we can take away from this, that we can learn from her story, because that's why she so graciously shared it with us. And then more importantly, know how to spot these kind of individuals so nothing like this happens to you. Hold on to your hats, everybody. Today's podcast is going to be wild. Okay, so first things first, a little bit of setup for this whole TikTok and this podcast with a couple of disclaimers on the side. You'll notice that I talk about dating as a culture. I talk about relationships as a culture. I rarely, if ever, point to any individual, celebrity, anything like that, and judge what they're doing. That's not the person I want to be. I also think it's very hard to really understand the complicated workings of a relationship from the outside and just through social media. I think we really don't know what most people are doing behind closed doors and inside their relationships. So there might be some relationships that look amazing and aren't, and there might be some that look super boring and are, such as mine, because it is. It's boring and wonderful. But I, in my time of doing this, never want to be the asshole. Never. No interest, zero interest that I am sitting here from the outside judging people. It's just not who I want to be. I'm not going to say that this has always been the person that I am, but boy, am I working hard to continue to show up in a way in my life and on this podcast and in my business and in my relationship with authenticity and integrity. And so that I can look at myself in the mirror every day and be okay with myself. Because I think that's fucking important. And I honestly don't know how some people in our world go home at the end of the day, look at themselves in the mirror, and are okay. Because I don't think that everybody is kind and doing good things out of integrity. So, the first thing I want to say is Risa, the woman who shared the story, told it chronologically, piece by piece. And I'm going to actually go through a lot of what she shared, give you the basics so you're on the same page as me. I just want to say that she's a fucking hero in my mind for sharing this story. She was honest. She shared her own flaws. She talked about the things that she ignored. She actually went on to say, "This is the story of how I met, dated, married, and divorced a real pathological liar." So that's where we're going here. And she said, "I'm going to be truthful, even if it makes me look bad. I'm going to be honest, but I'm also not going to be disrespectful to anyone that was involved." And I would tell you, a younger version of me, with the bullshit that went down in this situation, would probably not be so kind. Would not be so kind at all. So I have nothing but respect for this woman, for her sharing her story, mostly just so other people don't have to go through the same thing that she went through. Because I'll tell you, by the end of this, there's one video where she's pretty emotional and she's like, "This is taking a toll on me." Sharing this story, sharing this, honestly, this is trauma. I'm sure brought up feelings and emotions and triggers. So telling that and watching people react, respond in real time, because you guys, the first video alone, I told you there are 50 parts, has 28.2 million views. That's how big of a deal this is right now. And there are 50 parts. So there's a lot of people listening to this, a lot of people watching this. And as I sat there and listened to every single one, I read comments with every part. I wanted to see what people were saying. I wanted to see how people were reacting. And overall, I was highly surprised and delighted, because I love to be delighted by how supportive people were. I'm sure that if I would have scrolled down much further, that would not have been true. But tens of thousands of people saying, "You go, girl," and "Good for you," and "How do we get her a BMW," and everything else. That overall, I feel like the best of women, right? Which is us getting behind each other, supporting each other during times like this. But I also see the best of people when people get really fucking vulnerable and real, and that's what she did. So let me tell you this, whatever I am saying is no judgment in any way to Risa and how she handled this and her experience. I think she is a hero, and I know for a fact that there will be people who listen to that and will not get into relationships like it in the future, or may end up leaving a relationship that is unhealthy right now because of this. So she's a fucking hero in my mind. I also want to tell you that I thought long and hard about this for a couple of days if I wanted to do this podcast, because Risa is a Black woman and I am white. And I want you to know it weighs on me. I think about things before I do it, before I say it, before I come on here, because I don't want to be just some white woman in the corner judging. That's not who I want to be. Like that's not who I am. But I realized that I feel like I'm in a place in my life, in my head, and then this podcast to do an episode with the utmost kindness and respect to her and the situation. But I want you to know, I talked to a couple of different Black friends and just said, "Is this okay for me?" Like, they suggested it, but like, "Is this okay for me to do?" And I decided, yes, I decided that I could do this in a way that felt good in integrity. I'm also going to tell you, there are parts of me that are not completely in alignment in the way that she was dating and what she was looking for, in maybe some of her expectations of who a man should be or what that relationship should be. And that's okay. I come from a very logical, psychological, historical way of approaching dating and relationships as smartly as humanly possible. I know not everybody's on the same page with me. I know a lot of people don't know this information. And I know that some people just don't agree with the way that I talk about this. They're looking for more traditional relationships. They're looking for more traditional gender roles. And that's just not what I'm talking about or doing here. I just felt like that was important to say. By the way, I'll be spoiling this all over the place. I will be telling you. So if you want to watch this first, if you want to listen to it, if you want to clean on Saturday your whole entire house and listen to this, I figured it out part way that I could do it on double speed. And then that really helped quite a bit get this done. But I will be spoiling. I'll be telling you the gist of this whole thing. So if you don't want to listen to it or don't want to listen to all of it, you'll have the general idea. You can also Google it, guys. I was blown away that I did this a couple of days ago. And then I was like, I really want to get this workshop out with it. So I've been sitting on it. And then Time fucking Magazine wrote about it yesterday. Time Magazine, right? So this is actually a big deal. Okay, so let's set the stage a little bit. This all happens, and get ready for it because the date's going to mean something to everybody who listens. Part 1 begins detailing how they met on the Facebook dating app. Do you guys remember that? So they did meet online, but actually that has zero to do with this story. But they met in the beginning of March 2020. So right ahead of the COVID-19 epidemic. And I think that, and she says this, that although she owns the decisions and the things that she ignored, I think that some of the decisions that she made had a lot to do with all of a sudden our world was turned upside down. None of us knew what was going to happen. None of us knew how long this was going to last. And being in that space and dating from that space, well, it's fear. And as I love to say, what starts in fear has a very hard time turning around to love. But I'm also going to say, and so did she, there is not a lot of love in this story. There was a relationship, there was a marriage, but there certainly was not a lot of love. So they had a date. On the way to the date, she got a flat tire. So she called him up and said, I'm going to be a little bit late. I have a flat tire. Now, here is, I think, moment number 1 that we want to take notice of. He saves her. He picks her up. He helps her get to the gas station. They go over. They find a tire place. He pays for the tire and then takes her out to dinner. Now, everybody I know, particularly women who are listening to this podcast, that is some gentlemanly behavior. Let's be honest. That is shit that if that was going to happen, people would be like, what? That's a keeper right away. Like, I'm sure that she told that story and everybody's like, oh, well, hold on to that one tight. And I'm just going to say to all of us in that moment, including the former version of myself, that was one moment in time. And as you're going to find out from this story, that kind of behavior was not the norm. And that I believe extreme manipulators go out of their way to do things like that to win you over and manipulate you into a situation, and then it goes bad. So I think that's the first thing to point out here, because we're such a little green flag society. Wait, that one person did that one thing? Well, then they must be a good person. Nope. But we have to stop giving people, particularly manipulators, so much credit and power right away for doing one kind thing. But if you want to build trust right away with somebody, that's the kind of shit you do. And I also see that women, and I'm not saying this is her, but I also see in our culture and talking to women, the ones who are looking to be saved, the ones who are a little bit of a damsel in distress. And she wasn't necessarily that way. It was a weird moment, but weird moments happen, do tend to be manipulated more. They're more tied to the fairy tale of who person is going to be in their mind and the life they could create together than staying grounded and really watching for behavior, for patterns, for consistencies. So that's the first thing that happens. They go out to dinner and she is like, he is tall, he is good looking, We are vibing. I love it. They went to Cheesecake Factory. I don't know if you've seen all of the bullshit about women don't want to be taken to the Cheesecake Factory on dates. I know who the fuck all you are. I am fancy as fuck. I love nice things. But you can bet my ass if somebody wants to take me to the Cheesecake Factory, sign me up. Is it the brown bread? Yes. Is it my all-time favorite salad, the Santa Fe salad if you haven't had it with a cilantro pesto peanut dressing? Is phenomenal, and I've had that 100 times in my life. And there's, like, a part of me, a younger version from the '90s when I worked on cruise ships. The Cheesecake Factory was a big ass deal, like, we would take a cab to get to it at a place called Coconut Grove in Miami, and we'd go for there for lunch and their, like, 40-page menu, and it was a big deal, so I don't know who you all are and expecting millionaires to be dating you, but if somebody's taking me to Cheesecake Factory, I'm like, "Sign me up." Any person here can take me to the Cheesecake Factory at any time. You will be a temporary hero in my world. So they went to Cheesecake Factory. She's like, "We are vibing, things were good." And once again, she's already believing in this guy, hopeful about this guy. He's saved her. Right? She got a flat tire, which honestly can be really scary depending on where you are. I have been on road trips by myself and gotten a flat tire on major interstates, and fuck if that is not scary as shit. So he came, he swooped in, he took care of this inconvenience that is scary. He paid for it and then took her out to dinner. This guy's good. All right. And they were talking right away. She said, "We both established that we were dating for marriage. We are not dating just to date. We are not trying to be friends with benefits, none of that." And the pair got close quickly and decided to quarantine together. That's like an actual quote from the Time article because I cut and paste a couple of the main themes that I didn't take notes on. And that's a little bit of an understatement. That might be the biggest understatement ever. Because the one thing I will say here is due to when they met and the fact that COVID and quarantine happened in about 2 to 3 weeks later, they moved in together. So, guys, they moved in together after about 2.5 weeks. Now, I think we know how I feel about that. That's a no go for me. I realize, and she owned, she's like, COVID happened, and all of a sudden we're like, thinking this is going somewhere and we both really like each other. And we see all of what seem like green flags from him. He wants a long-term relationship. He's looking for marriage. He's looking for a family, which because that's what she was looking for, felt like a green flag. Next, he lets her know that he has plenty of money and that he can take care of her. And that's a complicated conversation. But whoever you are, and she mentioned that she grew up on welfare, when you have somebody who can come in and say, you don't have to worry so much about living paycheck to paycheck, that's music to a lot of people's ears. And faced with the kind of the decision between his studio, because he said he had just moved back, by the way, that's a lie, or her house, she rented a townhome, they decided that they would move into her place. And here's the deal, guys. Within a few weeks, she says, and this is what she, to quote, she's like, there was a United Nations of red flags beginning to unfurl in this relationship. She's like, you would have thought I was colorblind because I ignored all of that. She owned it. But let me just say this. I realized this was a tough situation. I realized it was COVID. I feel like there was a version of me who would be like, maybe meet somebody and think it was fucking kismet meant to be and let's move in. Let's just fucking do this. We're locked down. Who knows what's going to happen? I totally see that. But here's the unfortunate thing. That could have maybe went okay. I think that most of the time when we move in with somebody who we've only known for a couple of weeks, there's a chance that could go really bad because we don't know them. And not only do we not know them, now for a totally normal situation where it's just two people with their own stuff and their own unhealed things and yada yada, you've now taken this getting to know you process and shoved you into living together process, which is a very different step. Very different step. And I love how we're like, ugh, dating sucks. You know what else is really hard, if not harder? Moving in together and establishing how to live together as two people who may have been alone for a really long time. And though she admits, so this is what she also said, that she was feeling uneasy after noticing several disturbing behaviors, and most of that was lies that she was catching him in, such as, and she calls him Legion. That's the nickname she has for him, which I believe by the references I saw in the TikTok comments. So we can see how scientific and technical I'm being. I think that means like a group of demons, but he sounded like a dream. He sounded like too good to be real. And my dad, who was like the least emotionally evolved person that existed, used to say, if it feels too good to be true, it probably is. And I gotta say, I think that's true. I think that's true. And I think it's definitely true in this situation. So not only does he want all the same relationship things that she wants, get married and have a family, he's also showing her screenshots of his different bank accounts that have thousands upon thousands of dollars and saying, "You know what? We're good. I'm coming in. I'm taking care of you. We've got this." That feels so good when you have been alone or single or struggling for a long time. But guys, they knew each other at this point for only a couple of weeks. And all of this is too much too soon. And we have to start being smarter about them. So things are already starting to get a little creaky soon after that. First of all, she gets pregnant. And unlike myself, who did not have any feelings about religion and God and judgment about moving in with Danny, not being married, there are many people who do. And there are many women in particular who do. And so she already had a guilt that she was living with somebody that she wasn't engaged to. And then she got pregnant. And unfortunately, due to many different factors, and stress probably being one of them, she miscarried. And besides the little lies we see coming up, besides the things not really adding up, I feel like that's what we can say about this guy in the beginning. Just things aren't adding up. They don't quite make sense. And I think that we have to listen to that. Somebody said to me earlier today, and I've heard it a couple times this week, I'm just really empathetic towards people. And I'm like, no, empathy is recognizing that somebody else is struggling and being kind towards them. That doesn't mean you date them. That doesn't mean you have a relationship with them, that you sleep with them. That isn't empathy whatsoever. Fuck that noise, my girls. Fuck it. That's not real. That is you choosing a shitty situation and tolerating behavior you shouldn't and saying it's because you have so much empathy. I see you. So she miscarries. He isn't even there. He says he can't go because he has just gotten a promotion at his job to VP. So he's going to maybe make more money. In that process, they start looking at cars for him because he's now got a company that's paying for a car. By the way, not true. They start looking at cars for her because he wants her to upgrade her car, especially when they thought she was pregnant. Doesn't have money for that. None of this. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. And she just starts seeing the cracks. Now, this is where things get tough because those cracks start showing up right away. She admits it. There was stuff not adding up right away. She started taking audio diaries on her phone, talking about what she was noticing, talking about what she thought might be going on. I just want to say to anybody listening to this, if you feel like you have to have an audio diary to see or to check to make sure you're sane, like, A, get somebody else involved. Get a therapist involved. Get a professional involved. That's number one. But number two, something's not right. And she looks back and she goes, I listened to these audio diaries in 2024. And I knew something wasn't right. The number one thing I want you to take away from this podcast, as I keep talking about this, and I tell you all of the lies and I tell you all of the things. Trust yourself. If something feels off, trust yourself. If something doesn't feel like it adds up, maybe ask questions, maybe get clarification, but trust yourself. Ultimately, although once again, their situation was different because of COVID, when we're new in a dating relationship, we can still get out pretty unscathed. Pretty much just like a really good story for our friends at dinner. Do you guys remember when I dated that guy who ended up being a liar, blah, blah, blah? But she didn't. And the ultimate truth that we have to be honest with ourselves about is that she says, my life is different now. I am not the same after this relationship, after this situation. She says, I don't trust people the same way anymore. We have to be so careful, so thoughtful, so diligent when we're getting to know someone because unhealed, unhealthy, sometimes even mentally ill people can bring us into their world and take us for a terrible fucking ride that takes a long time to get over. Everything is 2020 in retrospect, right? In the rearview mirror. And it's very easy for me to sit over here and say, why didn't she kick him out of the house? They were just dating. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more in a second. But please do know that this work is so fucking important because one's a story at dinner with your friends, and one might be thousands of dollars in therapy for years. That's real. So let's talk a little bit about the lies that were showing up and then kept showing up and how deep the lies went. So, first of all, Legion, as she called him, told Tisa that he was the vice president of what she calls the condiment company. So she said there's a condiment company, I'm not going to say which, in order to conceal the identity that he worked for. But she later discovers that he is not a VP or vice president. He's actually a temp forklift driver at the company and was taking fake calls with employees to make her believe that he was the VP. Now, this is some of the weirdest and, to me, most disturbing parts of the story is that to keep these lies going, he was having numerous fake phone calls, one-sided phone calls. Like, I don't believe there was another person on the other line. So it was just him on a daily basis taking or having fake phone calls to convince her of these lies. What the fuck? Next, with the finances, Legion not only told her that he came from money, but he also had an offshore account with money that he earned while playing arena football. She later learned that he'd lived in a trailer park and sometimes out of his car and never played arena football. He also showed her screenshots of bank accounts that he just got from Google Images and a fake Chase mortgage pre-approved letter to make her believe his claims. Now, here's the thing I want to stop for a second. A lot of times when we talk about scamming, right, or lying, there is an underlying financial motive. So if you guys watch Tinder Swindler, which I did a podcast about, this guy was whining and dining and then taking women for literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. The thing is here, that's not actually what happened. You can watch all 50 episodes and you'll find out that he didn't really take any money from her. He was actually paying with his temporary forklift job, paying for the bills and everything else. So really, this is about some level of mental or emotional manipulation. This wasn't some underlying con artist that was trying to take her for all she was worth, because I think she'd admit, like, she was a normal person with a normal job, living paycheck to paycheck. paying rent for a townhome, and I think she said it was like $1,000, which holy shit. It was like a 3-bedroom townhome for $1,000. I'm like, "Where what?" Because that doesn't exist in Madison, Wisconsin. But I think that we, as a population and culture, go to normal places in our head. What was the motivation? The motivation is gonna be money. The motivation is taking advantage or whatever it is. But this is just, on some level, just really sad. Very sad. And I want to pause for a second because as I continue to tell the lies that he told, and let me tell you, what is this? 5 hours of content that she gave us. There was lie after lie. They went to houses, and then he would say that he was ready to buy the house and then would never show proof of funds. And they went to many house openings. And there's a point where she just said, I was embarrassed because I realized we were wasting people's time. She realized that this wasn't actually going to happen. And as we find out after all of these lies, this guy has nothing. He doesn't have an offshore bank account. He never played arena football. He doesn't have a savings. And in fact, by the end of this, after she does kick him out, after she does file for a divorce, he's living in his car. She also talks about before she kicks him out, what she says is that he hurts his knee and is basically bedridden. And he's not taking care of himself. He's losing a ton of weight. He's drinking Powerades. He ends up like peeing in the Powerade bottles. And she was like, that was the final straw of, are you peeing in this house? Like in this room? But one of the biggest takeaways, or what I think is maybe the major takeaway from this, because when we hear these horrifying stories, we're like, oh my God, there's so many bad people out there just trying to take advantage, just trying to con, just trying to hurt other people. But the one thing that I kept thinking when I heard this story, just being in the line of work that I do and being the person that I am with the knowledge I have, this isn't a mentally ill person. This was not some bad person, I think, trying to take her down. He was delusional. They were looking at $750,000 houses and he had nothing. They're looking at $90,000 cars and he had nothing. This guy was full on delusional. This is a mental illness. And she says he was in bed for a month. He was not working, all of this stuff. But that's depression. Now, I am not a therapist or a psychiatrist. I cannot diagnose somebody, nor would I even try. That's not my skill set. That's not my training. But I can tell you this. This is mental illness. There are not this underlying group of people out there just trying to take advantage of people. This network, right? That's not happening. And the only thing I hate when people share stories like this, and no, I'm proud of her for sharing the story, of course. I think she's going to help a lot of people. But me being me and doing what I do is that it's just another story that makes people scared. It's another story that makes people nervous about dating and having relationships. But I want to point out to everybody, this isn't some random person just trying to scam people. This person was actually not healthy, not in a good place. And in fact, when she ends up talking to his family members, when she starts digging in and finding out what was real and what wasn't, and by the way, like none of it was real, like everything he had told her for a year, none of it was real. His family member was like, he's lied since he was a kid. There is some shit there. So I want us to know that we can build the knowledge, the skills, and the mindsets to spot qualities like this and to be able to walk away before it turns into a life-altering event and not a good way. Here's a couple more of the lies that he told her. Education, he told her that he had a PhD in business administration, but according to her, he didn't actually even finish his undergrad degree. For his family, after more digging, she uncovered more lies that he told about his family. She found out through his brother that he completely made up 2 sisters. His brother also informed her that the family had cut ties with him decades ago. And She said that he would fake phone calls with family members to make her believe he was close to his family. In addition, after a conversation with his ex-wife, she found out that a stepdaughter that he said was dead was in fact alive. And of course, this is the one time where Tisa has actually given him money for the funeral. So this is the one time we see that finances are being tampered with. But let me tell you, she Nancy drewed this shit up. So once she started thinking maybe something's off here, I need to start getting real information. I need to start finding out what's true and what's lies. She ended up calling his ex. Now, he said, and I think this is something we can all learn from. He told her that he had an ex-wife and 2 stepchildren from the ex-wife that he loved very much and thought of as his own kids, and that his ex-wife cheated on him, and so he left her heartbroken, that kind of thing. Now, funny enough that when Tisa breaks up with him and he goes home to his family and she ends up talking to his family, guess what story he said about Tisa? That she had cheated on him. So this is just his go-to. His go-to is to make sure that he looks like the victim so that he can take advantage of people and find a place to stay or find people feeling sorry for him or have people give money to him. But here's something we can learn from. I hear stories all the time about people who got into relationships with somebody they shouldn't have gotten into, not on this level of severity, but when they ask about their past relationships, there's a victimhood. There's a lot of the bitch was crazy, was an asshole. They cheated on me. And one of the things that we can do, and by the way, this is in the workshop and it's got scripts and questions and things like that, is to start asking better questions. If you've ever worked with me, when there are women out there who quote back to me, ask better questions, right? Because I say it all the fucking time. What's the better question here? If anybody here watched the new True Detective, which I loved, by the way, she says it multiple times. That's not the right question. Ask a different question. Ask a different question. If somebody tells you their ex is crazy, okay. So when did they know? Why'd they date them? Why'd they stay? Why'd they maybe have children with them? And what would they do different? And then the most important question is, and what was your role? Because I have heard many stories where the very women who heard about crazy exes and exes that cheated and did all of these terrible things, they find out sometimes months or even years later that wasn't true. Or even if it was true, they were not owning their part in that relationship. I'm sorry, but I believe that every relationship, and by the way, that's not you dating somebody for a few weeks, right? I'm talking about people that you choose to get into a relationship with, that if people are asking you, you say you're in a relationship, that you are ultimately trying to build some kind of a future with them. If they can't tell you the role that they played in why their past relationship or relationships didn't work, you need to check it out. You need to ask a little bit more, or you need to dig a little deeper and ask better questions. Because I am a firm believer, and once again, not dating relationships, it takes two to tango. So why did they choose that person? Why did they stay with that person? What did they learn? What would they do different? These are valid fucking questions that we get to ask, and people get to ask us. So if you can't say what your role was in your past relationships not working, that's some work for you to do. I can help you find that and figure that out, by the way. But I think that one of the biggest red flags, and not even to mentally ill people or people who are extreme love bombers or people who are extremely emotionally unavailable or whatever we want to think, just average fucking people, if they don't have knowledge and acknowledgement of their role in their past relationships, that's not a person that you want to move forward with. And I think the most important video she did, and it's part 14, if anybody wants to go watch it on TikTok, but I actually went, downloaded it, transcribed it so I could just write down what she said that I think is so important. And it's what one of my friends who reached out to me about this was talking about, because she and her friends were talking about it. And it's something that I feel like we don't talk about enough. And I don't know if when I say this, that I have an answer for it, by the way. I have an answer for a lot of things. I don't know if I have an answer for this. But I think being aware of this mindset is so fucking important. In video 14 of the 50 videos, she said, a lot of what fueled me staying in this situation really was the fact that number one, I didn't want to be alone. Who hears that? Who feels that? Especially during a pandemic where the world just shut down and everybody's freaking the fuck out and people are dying. She's like, I just didn't want to be alone. Number two, man, this happens way more than we talk about. She said, I didn't want to look stupid by having the relationship end so quickly for everybody to be like, we told you something was up. So we had some pride and ego stuff there going on. Instead of turning around to her friends and say, this was a misjudgment, or this didn't work out, or I was wrong, and on some level, like, she shouldn't feel that way because there was a lot of just manipulation early on. But that's a real thing, that people stay in situations sometimes way too long because they don't want others to be right, or they don't want to look bad, or they don't want to look stupid. Or I think that as we get older, there's another one bites the dust, right? Another one is gone. And another one gone. And like, we didn't think I was going to do that. Right. Okay. But number 3, she said, I was ready to get married. And being ready to get married fueled a lot of this stuff. And I think we need to talk about that. I think we need to talk about a little bit later in that video, that exact video, she said, I wondered when it was going to be my turn. I see everybody else around me at work and at social media and everything else, and they have their person, they have their partner, they have their someone. And I thought to myself, when is it going to be my turn? Now, this is where she brought God into it. She tends to be more of a religious person. God, when are you choosing somebody for me? That's not really the way that I look at dating and relationships, and I respect that for her. But that kind of gut punched me when she said that. And then a couple days later, when I was discussing this with one of my friends, she said that's what her and her friends were talking about. That feeling of, after maybe years of 20s and 30s being single, that after a while we start going, wait, when is it my turn? Why does everybody get this and I don't? The first thing I want to say is, that's a fucking valid feeling. It is frustrating in our world and in our culture to be a single adult. There are judgments. There's just bullshit sometimes with families and jobs, especially if you're somebody who's never been married and you never had kids. And it's a way that we can feel like we don't belong and that we're an outsider. And evolution has taught us that our brain does not like to feel like an outsider. In fact, it will freak the fuck out. It goes into fear zone right away because it does not want to feel like we don't belong. So when is my turn? Fuck, that is a valid feeling. That's a feeling I felt a mere 10 years ago. The thing is, though, when is my turn is not an empowering statement. We are never acting from a place of love when we are acting from a place of when is it my turn. We are not probably going to choose good partners when we are dating from a place of when is it my turn. Because when is it my turn is that we have been wronged. When is it my turn is almost becoming a victim attitude. When is it my turn makes it seem like dating and relationships are out of our power. And I want to gently and kindly in this moment remind you that although they feel hard and they are hard, they are not out of your power. They are just not. We can date. We can meet people and we can create relationships. And I fully believe in my heart of hearts that if we know how to do it, this gets better, that there are dateable, wonderful people out there wanting to create a relationship with you. And when we find ourselves in the place of when is it my turn, it's a place where we make decisions quickly that maybe we're not paying attention as much, where we start to ignore things we shouldn't ignore because we want it to work out so bad. It's a statement from anxious attachment. And as much as I feel it, as much as I get it, I also want us to step back and realize that when we're in that place, the decisions that we're probably going to make are not going to be great. When is it my turn is part of the fairy tale. When is it my turn is part of making love and relationships uncontrollable. Now, part of us like to stay in the when is it my turn, or why not me, or why do they get to have it and I don't? Because when we are in that space, we don't have to actually look at what's really going on. We don't have to look at our self-worth and maybe how we're putting ourselves out there. We don't have to look at who we're choosing and if they're actually ready for a relationship. We don't have to look at if we have the skills to actually have tough communication and conversations to build a relationship, to set boundaries. We don't have to look at our attachment style or our anxiety or how sometimes we get a little crazy in dating and relationships. These are very real things. I can't promise, and God knows I wish I could. I can't promise that if you do this work with either me or a therapist or whatever, that you will find the love of your life and it'll be easy and you'll be married forever. I can't promise that to anybody. I can't promise that if they work with me, that they are guaranteed love. That's one of the hardest things about my business. And it crazily, some people do, and I don't know who the fuck they think they are, but okay. But what I can promise is that if you meet somebody who's a good match, you know how to do this. That if you meet somebody who is a good match, you can spot them and recognize those qualities. That if you do this work, you can also learn how to spot what you don't want. If we really look at her story, things didn't add up right away. Not 6 months in, not a year in, not 2 years in. Sorry, it was over before 2 years. Right away. But we want to give people the benefit of the doubt, or we want to be empathetic. I don't think that that's completely true. I think we're scared and we want to hold on to something that has anything that might have the tiniest bit of potential. But if we close our eyes, if we do not pay attention, if we don't know what we're looking for, we can get ourselves into terrible and shitty situations. And I don't want that for anybody. My heart hurts for her watching that. I teared up a few times because I could see the insecurities. I could see the confusion. I could see the different stages that she went through of even questioning her own sanity, because that's what manipulators do, is they make you question your own sanity. So how the fuck do we prevent this? The first thing you can do is you can know how to spot this and walk the fuck away. That's what my workshop's about. That's what I'm putting out. It's $39. That's it. It's like 2 hours of your life. So you buy it and you take a night or an afternoon on your day off. And for 2 hours, you sit down and you understand and learn what emotional availability looks like, what emotional unavailability looks like, what love bombing and toxic behaviors look like, how to watch for them, and when to walk away. I even have what are your universal red flags as well as your personal red flags. They're two different things. And then yellow flags. These are things that, oh, what's going on here? Huh. So maybe it's not a walk away, but it's this needs a conversation or this needs a boundary. This $39 workshop gives you an actual takeaway workbook that has lists of these qualities you can watch for. These are things that immediately tell you that person is not in a healthy place or actually emotionally available. We all live in this really weird headspace sometimes of, why isn't this happening for me? What's going on? I don't know. Is it me? Am I fat? Am I old? Am I blah, 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 blah? And not just, do I know how to pick somebody who's available? Because shit gets real lot easier when you do. So that's number one. Number two, make sure that you have the skills and support in place to walk away when you need to. So when these things, and why I tell everybody under the sun to go slow, and that's going to be a theme among everything I do, is so that we don't fall into things so quickly and so hard that we wake up, you know, how Looney Tunes and they wake up and they've got the flying birds around their heads and going, what the fuck just happened? I can tell you, she is still going 2 years later. What the fuck just happened? Like, it's literally called, Who the Fuck Did I Marry? Have that support system. Have those people in your corner, people you trust, people who give good advice. And maybe that's where you bring in professionals, because sometimes our friends and family members mean well, but aren't helpful. Have people that you can go to and say, I don't know, I'm kind of feeling weird about a couple of things. Could you give me some thoughts or feedback? We don't have to do this alone. Dating is hard. Relationships are hard. Taking two people who are highly imperfect, and most of them have not done any of this work, and trying to mush them together to create something that works is really hard. We can put people on our sides, knowledge on our side, skill on our side. This doesn't have to be as hard as we are making it. And I didn't even go into all of his lies. He was also cheating. She found that out. And because honestly, I think infidelity was the least of her problems. Of course, he's cheating because he's starting to notice that she's seeing through his bullshit. So, of course, he's going to go and try to get that attention or that weird manipulation high somewhere else. I don't know what was up with this guy. Like I said, I can't diagnose shit. That's not my skill set. But what I do know is this is extreme. It is not the norm, but we have to be fucking eagle eye in the first 3 months, particularly, because I promise you this, it shows up. It always shows up. When there's this level of lying, manipulation, emotional unavailability, you can spot it. You absolutely can. I don't give a fuck if you ever spend $1 with me. If you follow me, if you're on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and you're in a situation and you don't know and you reach out to me, I will get back to you. Just make sure I see it. You can email me, Kira at Reinventing Dating, and just say, here's what's going on. Any like short, quick feedback, I will give it to you. I will. I will be your temporary support system. And number 3, get clear, get intentional. I think that all of us can get a lot clearer on what healthy relationships look like and feel like, what qualities of people who are healthy look like and feel like. We are looking for safety. We are looking for commitment. We are looking for people who do what they say and say what they do. That is where you can build a safe enough relationship for love to show up every fucking day, which is the point. If we were to hear the beginning of Risa Mtisa's relationship, that first 2, 3, 4 weeks, I think that everybody would have been like, wow, good for you. Look at you. You got one of the good ones. But we have to be a little more intentional than that. We have to not be so blindsided by a couple of good acts. We have to slow down, take our time, go on action dates. If you ask anybody, that's one of my main things, just because we can observe behavior instead of people just telling us who they are and what they're about. This guy told her everything under the sun about himself, and not one fucking ounce of it was true. But how would she know until she slowed down? This is a tough ass situation. And if for some fucking weird ass reason, Risa, if you ever listen to this, free session, honey, free session, reach out to me. We can talk things through. I'm so sorry this happened to you. My heart literally hurts for anybody who goes through this level of awful trauma, because that's what the fuck it is. Because on this level of lying and manipulation, you don't even know where the ground is anymore. You look up and you think, is the sky actually blue? Who can I trust? Because the shittiest part of all of this is not that we stop trusting even others, we stop trusting ourselves. We stop trusting that we can make good decisions, that we can spot good people, that we can walk away if and when we have to. That's what really fucking sucks. Whenever we say, I have trust issues, I always want people to take a look and say, would you have trust issues if you knew what you were looking for, if you knew how to spot good available people, and if you knew how to walk away if it wasn't working? It becomes so much easier to trust and to put ourselves in consistent and safe situations when we trust ourselves and know we are capable of doing that. Get out of the fucking fairy tale land with me, everybody, because the fairy tales are what bring on these nightmares. Our hope and dreams and beliefs that someone's going to come in and just make our life 100 million times better without tough conversations or anything else. I'm so sorry, but it doesn't exist. What does exist is quiet, humble love for people who show up and choose each other each day and are in a space to do so. I want to thank Risa for sharing this story. And I'll tell you, I think that why this is so viral is because after you spend 50 different episodes or on our playlist videos, after that, you feel like you know this woman and your heart feels for her. We all think we're above this. We all think that who are these people that get scammed, or who are these people where this happens or that happens? Listen, shit like this happens a lot. Unhealthy people, and then downright shitty people who are trying to take advantage of others. Don't just give up dating. Get better at it. All right, guys, that's it for today. I hope I did right by this. I really fucking tried hard. I'm like tearing up right now because I feel so passionately about how shitty this situation was and that I'm so sad that people have to go through it. If you liked this, subscribe so you can hear more. If you are interested in this workshop, check it out. Learn.reinventingdating.com is where you can find it. There's also going to be a link right in the notes wherever you listen to this. But know that there are things we can do to do this better, and I'll help in every way I can. All right, guys, I will be here next week. If you're listening, I think you're the bee's knees, the cat's pajamas, the cat's meow, everything else. And please just remember to meet love halfway.